ahead, tell your story. What happened?
All right. So about 20 years ago, I was around 3 or 4 years old, and I lived in Connecticut at the time with my family, my two parents and my brother. I was a toddler and I was sleeping in between my parents, like toddlers do. And I wake up and there's a portal or a dream bubble that's revealed in front of me. It looks like my family kitchen at the house that we lived in at the time, but slightly different with different decorations and things like that. Um, I remember that there was this woman in the kitchen. She had like straight, long black hair, and she was kind of doing chores in the kitchen and milling around like you do in your house. And then all of a sudden, this humanoid alien type creature comes in from the basement or somewhere else in the house, and he kind of sneaks up on her and takes a knife off of the knife rack. And I remember just being like really scared watching this and feeling like just like trapped. This creature had long, elongated limbs and features. It was kind of like a gray green color. I don't really remember the face or even if it really had much of a face at all. I do remember that it wasn't wearing any clothing. The humanoid creature takes that knife off of the rack and then he approaches this woman from behind in like a threatening kind of way. It leads her out of the scene, and I remember trying to get the attention of my parents, but they were stiff and like rock hard solid and snoring really loudly, almost like it wasn't real that they were snoring because they normally didn't snore so loud. I couldn't wake them up and I couldn't see their faces. It was like they were stone or something like that. I remember then this creature kind of reaches out of the portal and it has this ripple effect, this visual ripple effect that I see. I don't really know the purpose of them wanting me to see my house or this situation with them threatening this woman. I think that maybe it was just to show me that it was like a threatening situation and that I had to apply, um, you know, be applicable to it. Um, but then I felt just like super afraid and alone. My parents were like frozen. They pulled me through this bubble and then we weren't in the house anymore. I remember the creature led me down this long, narrow hallway and I could see things going on in all of the rooms. The hallway had this sort of industrial look. It had like a gray, green sort of light. It was cold. I remember this humanoid creature took me in this empty room. It was like kind of barely furnished with like I think almost like an interrogation room. And they sit me down and they wanted me to drink juice. It almost looked like orange juice. I know it sounds really silly, but that's what it was. Um, the rest is a little bit fuzzy, and I can't really remember if I drank it or not, or if I were sedated or anything like that. But I don't remember going down the hallway again, or even traveling anywhere else. But suddenly, I remember being back in my parents' bed. I was really confused and really upset. I tried to wake them up again, and they were still like rock solid and immovable in place. They had their backs toward me as well, and it was just really strange. I then ran to my older brother's room to tell him what happened. And my parents and my brother, if he were still alive, could just back up the story, which just kind of makes it more real in my mind, especially because it's so vivid and because I actually never remember my dreams. Um, so the next day, I just remember being extremely like, distressed, and I had green spots on the jumper that I was wearing when I fell asleep. Um, I know it just sounds really crazy, but it's true. And like I said, my parents, they remembered it. They remembered me questioning me and like asking me what happened and all this kind of thing. So that's my story.
So we'll start from the beginning with the creatures. So talk about what they looked like more, and I want to also touch on certain topics of it, like the temperature of wherever you went, because I feel like that's really compelling. Is the shift in temperatures is really interesting. So
hmm
tell me to start off. Tell me about the beings. How tall were they? What did they look like in detail, if you can remember any of it?
I mean, at the time, I was super small. My mom is actually only like 5 foot, and I didn't even realize how short she was until I got older. So to me, this thing looked like it could have been like, you know, definitely over 6 feet, maybe seven, definitely a lot taller than this lady that was in the kitchen at the time. But I mean, I was a toddler, so that's it's kind of hard to answer. But it was like this long, almost like a Slender Man type of figure, if that makes any sense. Like thin, elongated. I don't really remember a face. Definitely not wearing clothes. And it's like this gray green color. Like if you had mixed like a pistachio color with like gray would be the color.
And then tell me about the temperature when you went to wherever it is that they took you. So tell me
I just
about the
remember
temperature.
it was just cold. I don't know how else to describe it as other than just being cold. I just remember being very cold.
I'm really interested about how tall these things were. I think that's really compelling because there's actually a photograph on our Facebook page that I will pull up right now. Um, I don't know if you have access to our messaging logs um, while you're on the phone with us. So would you be able to look at a picture if I sent it to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let me
I'd be
send you
really
that.
interested in, yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that because I mean, I've looked on the internet for my own curiosity and I haven't been able to find really anything that seems legitimate. It all kind of just seems like bogus alien garbage. And you know, like with the big eyes and things like that, but it's not really what it looked like. It doesn't look like any other images that I've seen. So if I saw something that looked similar, that would be really interesting for me personally.
Okay, they're coming your way now. This is actually a photograph. I'll tell you the details behind it. But let me pull up your messages here between us. And there you
Okay,
are.
cool.
There you are. Let me send those this way. Attach file. So there's one of the two. Well, technically it's just one photo, but the second one is zoomed in on the figure. Oh, there you
Mm,
go. Send.
I'm look I'm looking at like a forest.
Right, the second photo is the zoomed in part.
Okay, let me see. Oh my god. That yeah,
Close.
that kind of looks like it. I mean, I don't remember it having like I just got kind of a chill on my neck when I looked at it.
Looks a little
Ooh,
bit.
that's really bizarre. Yeah, it kind of it looks kind of like that. I don't remember it having obscenely large eyes or anything like that. I honestly just don't really remember the face that well, but the overall figure, and it looks like it's pretty tall, and that it's thin, and it has thin legs. Yeah, that kind of looks sort of similar to what I had seen. Where did you get that photograph?
So this photograph is, let me scroll down to it. Come on, computer. Actually more like internet. Uh
Oh yeah,
so
this like gives me a really weird feeling to look at. I don't know, and I like my eyes are starting to water looking at it.
it's a freaky photo,
Like
100%. Okay, here's the details behind
yeah,
it. So originally
that's
published,
weird.
yeah, originally published on November 8th, 2013. It's also up on the screen for our viewers if you're watching outside of Spotify. Originally published on November 8th, 2013, a group of young hikers insist they had photographed an extraterrestrial creature in a dense forest in Bulgaria. The group were hiking in a word that I can't pronounce. It's a region, a large meadow between the mountains of Rila and another word I can't pronounce. When they came across the mysterious creature, well, so that's basically all the details that we really have on it. They snapped the one photograph, they got it on the camera, and that's the only details we know about it. All
That
college
is
kids.
bizarre.
Yep,
Let me see
and
if I can see it in the. Oh, now I can see where it is in the photograph. Like I couldn't tell just looking at it to begin with, but I can
mhm,
definitely see. Oh, it is eerie,
like standing
and
off in
it
the
looks like
fog.
it is very tall. Yeah, it had to. It was definitely considerably taller than this woman. I mean, like typical height for a female is like 5'5" or something like that. So at least like over a foot taller, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, you always hear about the little ones. You know, everyone talks about the little figures, the 3 foot tall beings, but
No,
this,
this one was like basketball player tall.
yeah, it's
Definitely remember
freaky.
it not being a little alien.
So yeah, no, that
Another
that photo
interesting
freaks
thing
me
is
out.
that I originally posted a story on Reddit, and there was one person that was saying how it sounds like a childish dream or something like that, and then somebody else made a comment that how like aliens can mind warp, and
Hmm.
how if it were something that was more complex, then it wouldn't have been something that I would have understood. And that kind of resonated with me because I've had my own doubts about this whole story, because it is really strange. And then you do think, is it a false memory? But then if my parents remember it, my brother remembered it, then, how can I doubt that? And for someone that's literally so young, then why would, like, how would that come about? I just don't understand. Another strange thing that you might find interesting is that after that, in all of the photos that were taken of me up until I was around 7 years old, I never looked at the camera. Like, I was always looking to the side, and I've always kind of thought that maybe that was some kind of strange thing of like not looking into the camera of after being abducted by aliens. I'm really not sure, but it's kind of a theory that I've had. Like, all pictures of me as a child, I'm never looking at the camera after that age until I was around 7.
It's a
Very
really
weird.
it's a really weird phenomenon. Let me tell you. Like, have you heard of the what is it the local one that happened here? There was a movie made after it, Fire in the Sky. Have you heard of it? Heard of it?
No, I haven't. I have not heard of that movie.
So for those who watch us, we're based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and Phoenix, Arizona is very well known for its UFO sightings and all that kind of stuff, especially after what happened in '97 with the big lights in the sky that literally flew over the entire city, and everybody saw it and filmed it, and everyone's like, "Yeah, we all saw it." Giant light thing in the sky that hovered over Phoenix for a while. But anyway, Fire in the Sky is out in there's a national forest out here, and there were loggers out there doing work. This was back in the '90s, I believe. And no, it was farther back. It was farther back than that. But anyway, I think it was 1980s, and these loggers were heading home. And as they were driving home, they were all in a truck. They piled in a truck together, and as they were driving through the area, they noticed a disc in the sky. They decided to follow it, which I would have done as well. Um, and they followed the disc, and it actually dropped down onto the forest floor. And so they actually got out of their vehicle, approached it, looking at this metallic disc that was sitting, in the forest. And one of the loggers approached it and touched it with his hand. He got blown backwards. Big flash of light. All the other loggers panicked. They got in the car and they left him because they thought he was dead. They just saw a big flash of light. His friend went flying off into the air. And they thought he was dead. So they packed in the truck. They drove back to town, and they said, "Hey, their buddy didn't show up." So they went to the police, and the police went out there with a big search party, and they couldn't find him, and they looked everywhere, and then they started to be like, all right, these other loggers killed him. So they started questioning him. They're like, all right, man, we know you killed him. This UFO story is nonsense. It's be real here. We know you killed him. And they all passed lie detector tests saying that no, the disc in the sky that we saw was real. What happened out there on that night is really what happened. And then after missing for 5 days, he's found alive, naked on the side of a highway. And he says,
Bizarre.
yeah, he remembers what happened, and he says, and he, came forward and said, no, those 5 guys that I was with that night, they're telling the truth. What happened that night is true. They didn't hurt me. And I went up in this spacecraft, and they did some tests, and last thing I remember after waking back up was being on the side of the road, and the thing shot off into the sky. And it's a
Yeah.
wild story, and that was here in
I think I've
Arizona.
actually heard of that story. You said that there were loggers?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
here in Arizona in it's a very famous UFO case. It's really freaky because it's all backed up. All these different people saw it, I mean, what, 6 people saw it, it's not like one person coming forward with this. And then he was missing for it was Travis Walton, and that took place in 1975. And November 5th was the day he went missing.
Wow.
It's like these stories aren't uncommon, and I really don't think you should really be afraid to talk about it because a lot of people are experiencing these things, it can't just be chalked up to a couple of crazy backwoods people. It's much more than that at this point. It's a very weird phenomena.
So
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm a reasonably rational person, so I don't know. It's just and just to have such a detailed dream or whatever memory of the situation just is very it's very haunting to me.
for a lot of people, like we always got to reinforce this that like your experience, it's what you experienced, whether it is real or not. It's what you saw, it's what happened to you, and that's what we're here to
Mhm.
listen to. We don't, we're not going to tell you that you're batshit crazy, because more than likely you're not. Like we've heard some pretty outlandish things, and stories of people encountering Bigfoot, stories of people encountering UFOs, and stories of people encountering ghosts, or sleep paralysis, whatever it is. Like everyone says that they think they're crazy, or someone tells them they're crazy. They're not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no,
Definitely. Well, I believe in it. After that experience, I've always believed in it. Not that I've, been super out there with it, but I mean, you think about how big the universe is, and it would just be really crazy and almost like just human narcissism to believe that there's nothing else out there.
there's a lot of weird stuff out there, 100%, and there's too many accounts for us to just be like, it's all nonsense. There's just too much, and especially who was Daniel? We had a guy on named Daniel. That was episode 27, and he, I love talking to Daniel, and he told us a story about. He never talked about it until he basically came on the show. He had never spoken about it publicly or like to other people outside of his immediate circle because.
I mean, that was like the similar with me because
Mhm.
just you don't want people to think what
Right.
they're gonna think.
Yeah, and that's the worst part about it is because then people never come forward, and all these people thinking just sit on it for years and years and years and just think about it, like, oh, it's all nonsense. But Daniel's story was really awesome because this happened back in the '80s, so this was over, um, you know,
So it was in Oregon. It was in North Oregon. This one was in the Cascades, I believe, and then his second story was in Mount Hood. So this is Central Oregon.
yeah, and he had an experience where he basically had seen a Sasquatch in within a very close distance while he was camping in a very remote area, and the only reason that he actually decided to come forward now about it after all these years is because he's really he's not working anymore, and he's much older now, and he said that he's like, I really don't care what people think now at my age. He's like, I want people to think I'm crazy, they're gonna think I'm crazy. But he said that the reason that he's never second guessed himself about it over all these years is because there were three other people with him that day that saw the same animal. And, people will tell you, like, oh, you saw Sasquatch, it was a bear. I hear that all the time. It's just people are seeing bears and freaking out. Daniel's like, nah, every day. When he came on the show, he said literally last week he talked to one of the people that he was with the night he saw it, and he asked him about it. He's like, "Hey, you remember that one night in the Three Sisters Wilderness area?" And he goes, "Like it was yesterday. I remember exactly what we saw that night." And he's like, "It was too close, man. It was too close. It was too big. They had such a clear look at it. They know 100% what they saw. And then
Yeah.
once people start coming out about this stuff, all of a sudden you have thousands of accounts of people that are like, actually, I've seen that too. Back in the '70s, I saw something. In 2005, I saw an animal out in a really deep wilderness area, and a friend of mine whose dad was the head of the Forestry Service thought it was all crap for 30 years when he was working out in the wilderness, and then one day he found footprints in such a remote area. He was like, "Yep," changed his whole perspective on it. So I think it's really important for people to get out there, share their stories, so other people can start talking about it, and then you can see patterns and understand that it's not just something in people's heads. It's not something they're making up. There's something to it, and that's why we have the show is so people can come on and share encounters, and people can, I guess, what's that famous? You're not so alone.
You talking
Yeah,
about
I
the
mean,
your
I've never come across a story that was really super similar. To me, the thing that stands out, maybe not the most, but it stands out a lot, is how my parents were like frozen pretty much, and how loud that they were snoring. Like that's very, very prominent in my memory of not being able to wake them up and then literally feeling like they were like statue not going to move. Very strange to me. I don't know if anybody else has encountered anything like that about things being frozen or the people around them being frozen.
Honestly, if anyone's gonna come forward with something like that, it's probably gonna be through the show, because I've had people reach out to me through the show that have said, "Hey, I heard episode whatever what that guy saw. I saw that too." It's not all just in this guy's head, and so you never know. Someone might come forward next week, 2 years from now, that listen to this episode and say, "Hey, no, this exact thing happened to me." Just because you might not have found anybody on Reddit or wherever you post it, you know, you might not find somebody there that's had the experience, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some people out there that have experienced the same thing.
What's crazy is
Yeah.
we actually had a person on who said they had a portal appear in their room. You remember that? And they kind of described a similar wavy effect. I don't remember
I'm
exactly
so
what
sorry.
happened during
I
that.
can't I can't hear what you're saying.
Ah, let me scoot over a little bit and let me speak up. So we had a person on I think it was a couple months ago who said they had a portal appear in the room, like similar to what you say, with the whole like wavy effect. I don't remember exactly what happened in his story, but it's to the likes of like it was where the TV was in his bedroom, and it even left like burn marks or some shit like that around that area to kind of reinforce that the this actually happened and I wasn't just having some weird dream.
It almost looked kind of like it was like a tear. You know what I mean?
That's what he said it looked like. Is it looked like some type of weird disturbance, or I really don't know how else to describe it, but like he even struggled to really describe it. He was like, I don't know what this is. And
Like it didn't really have like hard edges. It wasn't like, like a square screen or anything like that. I remember it just being kind of like ambiguously shaped. I don't know, it was very weird.
yeah, it's a really weird phenomenon. Let me ask you this question then. What do you think aliens are? Where do they come from? Do you think that they're something from another galaxy or another solar system, or do you think that there's some type of like interdimensional thing?
That's a really interesting question. Um, I kind of, I don't know. I really don't know. I kind of think that they are probably from space, considering, I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't really thought too much about that. I definitely believe in there being like parallel realities, and especially because I saw something that looked like it could have been a parallel reality because it didn't really look like it was the past or anything like that. I don't know. I think that they could be, from a parallel reality. That seems plausible to me. But then again, because the universe is so big, then you think that like there's got to be other kinds of life out there that are intelligent, that are seeking, information from other intelligent forms of life. Or I don't even know what they think of us. Maybe they think that we're stupid. Who knows?
Yeah, like can you imagine it? Them looking down on us and being like, "Look at all these dumb apes. They're
Yeah.
you know."
One thing that
And
actually
it bothers me. I think, like, what did they want? Like, what did they do? Like, what? I don't even know. And I don't remember how I got back to my parents' bedroom either. It's just, I don't know. It's like, what happened?
in the name of science,
In
one
the name of
thing
science, yeah.
one thing that comes to mind is I was actually listening to a recent Joe Rogan podcast. He had a guest on and explained basically what black holes are. So this is going to get into some weird territory, but to say that another race couldn't figure out how to open up portals and send it to wherever you were and have you come through, whatever happened, to put it
Mhm.
in perspective, there's black holes, right? There's collapsed suns or dying suns, and their mass is so heavy that not even light can escape it. That's what a black hole is. And
Mhm.
there are very real things out there, such as that we as humans can't even fathom. And these are just natural things that happen. Who's to say that some species out there can't make some portal, like Pickle Rick?
Well, another interesting thing is like you think about it, and humans can't even conceptualize numbers up into a point that's not even that large. So, you know, that's just something to think about. You know,
Yeah, the whole
I hope
multiverse
that
theory
sounds
is
relevant.
yeah, no, the whole multiverse theory is so complex, and there's so many theories to how it all works. And like I explained on when we had the guy with the portal on, is like how they think that portals or rifts happen is there's called the puck theory. And basically what is it's like imagining hockey pucks stacked on top of each other as each universe, and they're pulling towards each other, and every once in a while they just slightly, ever so slightly, cross over, and that's where you end up with these holes or whatever, these portals that he described. And this is all just theory, obviously, but that's one of the theories that's out there. And then on top of that, who's to say there isn't a species that has technology where they can manipulate something like that? I mean, when you really break down the universe and think about like what could be out there, we don't have the slightest idea what's really out there and what these things could be capable of. You know.
And then you don't know what's known and what's being kept from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing. But also, like, I just thought about how you asked if it was something from space or a parallel dimension, and it's kind of like both, because time goes around differently on every planet. Like they all have their own rotation, and time's moving in like a different way. So it's kind of maybe both, which is kind of like a meta answer, but
So I'm gonna butcher this.
something to think about.
I'm gonna butcher this really bad. I am not a scientist, okay? I don't study sciences, but basically, this man was explaining it like that there is a world, right, where I am sitting here at this table and I see the car keys in front of me and I move them to the left. But according to this law, the laws of this like specific science, there is also a world where the car keys are sitting in front of me and I move them to the right. And it is almost impossible that there isn't the two versions of what happens, the multiple dimensions. That's it's not the best way to explain it. Again, I'm not the one who came up with this, and I couldn't quote him word for word, but I'll find it and you'll see it.
Yeah,
Well, I
and
mean, I know, like the Matrix. I know, I don't know, something crazy to talk about, but like the Matrix, the movie, kind of makes a good point about that.
like the whole like and when I going back to like the whole aliens being something from outer space and something from another parallel world, who's to say that that's not how they travel? What's to say that they aren't some species from another galaxy, and how they travel is they have some type of technology that can open and they can shortcut through these portals or whatever you want to, wormholes that you want to call them. And so, like I said, we don't know what's out there. We don't really. There's so many theories about how a lot of this stuff works. It's a real question.
Yeah, definitely interesting to think about. But yeah, I kind of think it's a little bit of a mixture with both of where they come from, or they have the technology to be in multiple parallels at a time, like they're multi-dimensional beings.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
When you really break it down, and because like on our planet where we are, what you experience sounds really really different. Like it's not normal. But when you break it down and you put it on a scale and compare it to the grand scheme of things, it's really not that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I mean, like, the kind of to own up to the sort of juvenile nature of some of the details in my story, I
Hmm.
really do think that that time warp um, theory kind of holds up because I would understand that like they would kind of be able to tap into our psyche a little bit to see what would be the most kind of stand out to whoever they're messing with or abducting or whatever they're doing.
Yeah. So it's very reasonable, I should say first. It's very reasonable to think about it in context of, Earth, humans, small like location. That's like small brain thinking. You got to think big brain, and you got to think on the grand scheme of things. And when you put it that way, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How you feeling about all this now that you've kind of sat here and talked about it with us?
I mean, I feel I was kind of nervous to talk about it, but I feel a little bit better about it now. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not something that I've ever shared publicly. Like posting on Reddit was the first time that I ever decided to, tell anybody about it that wasn't like my family. Most of my friends I haven't even talked to about it. You know, like somebody that I was dating for a year and a half didn't even know until I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna do this podcast thing about being abducted by aliens," and they were like, "Wait, what?" So
Are they
yeah.
so hold you just randomly drop a bomb on them like, yeah, I'm doing a podcast about being abducted by aliens, and just leave it at that? Or is that's just how it went down?
I mean, obviously, like I shared with them like what the story was, but it wasn't something that I had ever brought up before.
Oh, did they take it well, or were they kind of like on the realm
No,
of?
they were like, "How'd you not tell me? Like, I fucking believe in aliens," and I'm like, "All right, cool, good."
That's good. That's good.
Fuck yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of people believe in aliens, especially younger people, because we're just like, there's so much out there, and we're a little bit more open-minded than older people, I think.
There's actually this video that I saw. It was like a news reporter in some city in back in like the 60s or the 50s, whenever black and white was like TV was the thing. I don't know when that was. And he would interview random or ask a question to random passersby, and he would say, "Do you think we're alone out here? Like, are there aliens?" And a lot of these people, they would be like, "No," they wouldn't even want to talk about it because like that's just like crazy talk. And then there are other people out there that would come up and be like, "Well, you see that we're this lone planet in this solar system. The solar system is just one of many in a galaxy, and this galaxy is one of many. Like, there's no possible way." It's just you're right, people nowadays are a bit more open-minded about these kinds of things.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Well, I'm pretty comfortable with this if you are too, if you're ready to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Right on. Well, I'd love to thank you for coming on the show. That was a great talk, and I'm glad you shared your story. And hopefully, some of our viewers out there will relate to you in some way, and maybe they've had their experience, validated now. And you know, like those hikers,
That
they photographed something in that forest, whatever it was.
that would mean a lot to me if I could validate someone else's experience because I've looked myself to validate my own experience. You know, so if anybody else had a similar event happen to them, it'd be very interesting to talk to them.